and this is Matt. What's up, Matt? How you doing?
Hey Bart, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, perfect, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries.
Um, yeah, so I guess I'll get right into it. So I was just playing 1-2 at TCH Dallas.
Okay.
9 players,
Yep.
and so the only stacks that matter are mine. So I have 900 in my stack. Small
Okay.
blind has 1400, and the big blind has 800. So
So,
essentially,
okay, so it's like eight. What did you say your stack was? 900?
mine was 900.
Mm-hmm.
The small blind had 1400, and the big blind had 800.
Okay. Okay. So 1-2 TCH Dallas. We sometimes see this on the live stream. I don't know. Actually, the 1-2 games are not match the stack, right? This is a capped game.
Yeah, so this is a capped game,
Uh huh.
but so it's capped at 300, but no one had less than like a 600 stack. Um,
Right. Okay. So it's
yeah,
got
so
built
we
up
were
a little
pretty
bit.
deep.
I think the cap is
Yeah,
300, right? Isn't it? The max
yep,
buy-in? Yeah.
yep, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. All right. Tell us what happened.
but yeah, so pre-flop, under the gun just limps, under the gun +1 limps, low jack limps, hijack limps, and I'm on the button, and I look down at 8-2 of spades.
Oh, okay.
Um,
So here's the thing, because I want everyone to kind of understand this is that this is an interesting post flop scenario, and obviously we can all conclude that this is way too wide for an overlimp, which is what the caller is going to do. But this kind of reminded me, and I think that we can learn a lot from this if you're ever posting dead, like if you've missed the blinds and you come back and post dead behind, like you post all three blinds or however it works, because you'll sometimes get a free look in position with a hand like this. Now, this is not a drop game. This is not a rake game. It's a time game. I still think over limping here is way too wide with like 8 deuce of spades. Maybe I would go so far down as like 8 5 of spades, but
okay.
it's just too wide. But you over limp, is that right?
Yep,
Uh
I
huh.
overlimped.
Yep.
Um, and so the small blind raises it to 20.
So
Um,
small blind raises to 20. Okay.
yep.
Okay.
Um, big blind calls. Under the gun calls. Under the gun +1 folds. Low jack and hijack call. Um, and so I just call. um,
So
yeah,
four
because
limps to hero who overlimps on the button with 8 deuce of spades. Small blind makes it 20. Big blind calls 3 calls in between, right? 2 or 3 calls in between. And then you
uh,
overcall.
4 calls.
So how many people to the flop now?
So there's 6 people to the flop. Sorry.
6 ways. All right. So 6 ways times 20, right? So 120. Now, this
Yep.
is super interesting because this is one of the small stakes exploits. Not that here's the thing from the big blinds perspective. This is I wrapped up the small stakes exploit series over on Crush Live Poker, and this is one of the small stakes exploits. Although 20, I mean, I would imagine, what is the standard open here in this game? Is it usually to 15 without limps?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Essentially.
So if the standard open here is to 15, I think this is exploit 20, which is hopping on small preflop sizing after many limps. You can just liberally 3-bet away because what I'm seeing here is a bunch of limps, you overcalling, and the small blind making it 20, which is almost like a standard open. This is never a strong hand unless he is like doing something where he's trying to induce somebody to 3-bet. If I'm the big blind here and I have a playable hand, I'm going to 3-bet and drive everybody out, and this guy just doesn't have any type of strong hand. It's not a common exploit that you'll see. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's just so clear cut in this example. Now, if you came in there with a limp, yeah, obviously you're going to call, right? 15 more, you're getting like 8 or 9 to 1. So, like I said, we can kind of treat this as like a posting dead type of scenario. So 6 ways, 120 to the flop. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, real quick, I wanted to ask you, right? So, you know, people always say like, "Oh, I'm priced in, I have to call this," right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what is being like priced in? Like, what are the odds I need to get to be quote unquote priced in? Is it like
Well,
5 to 1 or?
Well, there's a couple things going on here, right? So when people say you're priced in, I mean, theoretically, you're actually supposed to defend much tighter multi-way. So people think, oh, I'm getting 4 to 1 when it goes raise call. I'm going to call here in the big blind. When in fact, you're if people are playing anything close to what they're supposed to be playing, that call is supposed to be much tighter. Where you'll see you get to call wide is when it's heads up because you get to realize your equity. Now, I can't put a number necessarily on what is priced in, but here's the thing. It's always good that you're closing the action and then no one can squeeze you. That's why you see a lot of
Right.
people call on the big blind because no one can squeeze them. Here you're closing the action so no one can squeeze you. And I would just say that I think people, what they don't understand here is that some people would complete here in the big blind getting like 8 or 9 to 1 with any two suited cards. So how can you not complete on the button when you have ultimate position in the same exact scenario? So you can't put a
Right.
number on it. It's more of, am I closing the action? How multi-way is it? Things like that.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, the flop comes 2 of clubs, 2 of hearts, and 10 of spades.
2 of clubs, 2 of hearts, 10 of spades. So you flop trips.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so the action goes small bet leads out for just 50.
Well, I mean, okay. I mean,
Um,
that's not crazy small or anything like that. He's leading out for, for 50 into 120. Okay.
right. So the big blind calls
Okay.
and it folds around to me
Mm-hmm.
and I re-raise to 200.
Okay. So you raise. Usually when we say re-raise, it's when you're raising a raise, but you're just raising, but that's fine. So you raise to 200.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so both the small blind and big blind just call.
All right. I mean, I like it. I actually like fast playing right away here. I mean, there isn't a draw out there at all, right? It's total rainbow. There's no straight draws. And people might say, well, what are you raising here if you're only raising with a deuce? So in essence, it is a little bit unbalanced here. Maybe people could find some raises, but I don't think you would really do it multi-way with like Jack 9 of spades, which is like a wraparound backdoor 3 card, like straight flush. But I think all that shit goes
Right.
out the window. I have no problem just like sort of straight fast playing right away. You make it 4x to 200, and again, the small blind covers you because you have 900, so you're trying to get as much money in as possible. I might have made it a little bit smaller, but okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. So yeah, pop like 720. Um, and so the turn is the jack of spades.
Okay.
And so the small blind checks, and now the big blind leads out for 225. And so I just call, and the small blind calls.
So let me just make sure that we're all on the same track here. Turns the jack of spades, so it's deuce of clubs, deuce of hearts, 10 of spades, turns the jack of spades. So you now pick up a flush draw with your deuce, right?
Correct.
Now,
Yep.
if someone else has a deuce, your kicker is not going to play. That's one of the
Right.
interesting things about having trips on like these types of boards and kind of scenarios and things like this that, you're not going to, if someone has any deuce, now they can outkick you here, like ace deuce, king deuce, queen deuce, those hands will outkick you in a given scenario, but your deuce is not going to play here in this spot if someone has a deuce. It's interesting that the big blind called the small blind's lead, called your raise, and now leads turn, but the big blind only has 800, or started the hand with only 800, so he's got maybe, I don't know, maybe like 350 left or something like that. The only
Yeah.
thing that I would say here is that I might call, but it's not like I'm not trying to fast play or anything. I might call to try to rope the small blind in. Because if the small blind
Yeah.
has an overpair, although that raise size pre isn't really indicative of that much of an overpair, but if we were in a normal situation and the small blind called your raise on the flop and it's sort of a small stakes game, if you raise the turn now, like if the big blind comes out and bets and you raise the turn, unless the guy is just a total idiot, he should be folding here with an overpair. So I don't think you
Right.
need to build the pot up that much. So I might call here just to try to rope the small blind in.
I see. And so, but you would, so if you weren't trying to rope the small blind in, would you would just jam?
I think you can probably go either way with it because it is a situation where, I mean, the stacks, if you were much, much deeper, you might call because your kicker doesn't play and this guy can have some deuces as played. So it's a little bit of stack
Right.
protection. But if I had like, ace deuce here, or if, instead of having like not, 8 deuce spades here, you somehow had like 10 deuce or jack deuce, I might put in the raise just to, get as much money in as possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
So you call?
Yep. I call big small blind calls as well.
So small blind calls.
And do
Okay. So
you,
there you go. So we go 675 on the turn here. So it looks like the pot is just like, I'm going to call it 1400.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the river is the five of spades.
So the backdoor flush now comes in.
Right.
Okay.
And so the small blind checks.
So
And
the small blind checks. Okay.
yeah. And the big blind bets out for 250. So he has like 100 left in his stack.
So the big blind bets 250. So he bet the turn for 225, and now he's betting 250, leaving himself with $100 left, right, in his stack.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, there's a couple of things going on here too. Is that you want to get all the money in, because if this guy has a deuce here, you beat him now. So if he had a higher deuce, you beat him now, right? He's got 100 left.
Right.
So again, it's a scenario. It's kind of an interesting little scenario because, if you call and the small blind calls, you get 250, right?
Right.
Like I think you have the best hand here when you back into the flush. Like very, very. I mean, I guess once in a while it's possible that the big blind is doing some crazy thing and he backed into spades, but we have to do basic hand reading where he called your flop raise. He called your flop raise. So how does he have backdoor spades and then you have it? Most likely his hand is a deuce or it's jack 10 that he thinks is like, he just doesn't know what's going on. So what's interesting here is that he only has 100 left. So you kind of want to get that last 100, but if you raise here and you make it 500 and you get the small blind to fold out, then you lose the 250 from the small blind. You'll get the 100 from this guy. But if you just call, maybe the small blind overcalls. He just can't get rid of an overpair because this guy bets 250. You call, the pot will be 19. So in this particular case, you might want to call just to get the small blind overcall because this guy is basically all in. If the stacks are deeper, yes, I would raise. And if we weren't in this type of situation where we don't want the small blind, overcall, yes, I would raise,
I see. That makes sense. And so so actually I wanted to ask you about this here as well. So what do you make of smaller stakes when people bet a large portion of the stack into a massive pot and leave themselves with like 100 behind, right? Like, does that just scream value, like a value bet to you, or?
No, not. I mean, the pot's 1400. The guy only has 350 left. He's betting 250. It's 1/7 of the pot, right?
Right.
So no, not in this case. Absolutely not. Now, where again another small stakes exploit, when the pot gets large, you should be looking at the small stakes at the absolute size of the bet as opposed to the percentage of the pot. And what I mean by that is if someone bets 30 into a $30 pot, that's 100% of the 100% of the pot, right? But the pot's small. Whereas in a 1-2 game, if someone's betting like 600 into like 1500, well, okay, yeah, that's only 40% of the pot, but it's 600. And my strong interpretation is that 600 is a much stronger bet into 15 than 30 is into 30. You know what I mean? It's all about absolute size. But as far as your question goes, no. I mean, the guy only has 350 left. What did you do?
Yeah. So I just call. And the small blind ends up folding queen face up.
So the small blind finally folds queen. So this is what we want, though, because I would have thought that if the small blind had come this far, he would have thrown in 250 more for 1900, right? Because when it goes 250 and you call, the pot's 250 for him to call because he called the turn.
Yeah.
So that's why I might call. I want that hand to fold. All right. So small blind folds queen, and then what happened? What was the reveal?
Yeah, and then the big blind shows jack.
Wow. So he just called in the big blind, and then he led on the turn with a full house.
Right. Yep.
Well, I mean, you sort of accidentally, you kind of accidentally saved $100 there. That's just insane play. And again, I don't want to be results oriented, but I think it's a good little hand if we're ever posting dead. Whenever you get a rainbow board where you flop trips and you back into a flush, it's almost impossible for a guy to have a backdoor flush. So, 9 times out of 10, you're going to absolutely have the best hand here,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and yes, it can be treacherous. It definitely can be treacherous in these small stakes games. But thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, and check out the coupon code in the description to try out the Crush Live Poker training site for free.